Okay, Alexander, we're live.
Right. Excellent. Hello, Alex.
I'm setting stuff up, so just say a hello and a minute or two.
Okay. Right. Well, hello. Just to say, I will only be able to be with you for a short time because in a little time I'm going to be going to another event which has been prearranged. Perhaps I'll be rejoining later. We'll see. But in the meantime, what I would say is that if anybody wants to get a blow-by-blow account of events in Ukraine, right place to do it is to go to Alex's channel. Follow him either on Locals or Rumble or wherever, and you will see that he gives regular updates about the news in this continuing crisis in and around Ukraine at the moment. I'm going to make a couple of very quick observations. The first is that yesterday we had the sanctions announcements from the European Union, the United States, and Britain. I think they were all, frankly, a broken reed. I circulated to various people, including Alex yesterday, a long article written in the Daily Telegraph, which actually unpacks the sanctions, points out how completely ineffectual they are. I think European governments are starting to understand that. From the way that President Biden was talking yesterday, I don't think he does. I think he's completely lost touch with reality. But one of the most interesting things about the sanctions announcement, and it's been clarified over the course of today, is that the United States is going to take no step at all which will disrupt Russian energy supplies. And I'm sure that also involves food supplies, in other words, raw material supplies altogether. Russia makes around $700 million a day from these exports. And that figure is rising as the oil and gas prices are rising. And that is what you need to take into account when you look at these things. Now, the Russian banks, which have been sanctioned, were banks which were sanctioned already. This isn't going to make a huge amount of difference to their activities. Apparently, some kind of mechanism is going to continue to enable them to convert dollars into rubles, in order to collect the money from their energy and raw material sales. And of other countries, China, India as well, as it turns out, when President Biden was asked about India's stance, he said that the Indians have not so far come on board the sanctions policy. And on the contrary, Prime Minister Modi, had a very friendly conversation with Putin yesterday, in which he seemed to show great sympathy for Putin's position on the whole Ukraine issue. So China and India are not supporting this policy. Interestingly, even little Georgia, the other country that was promised NATO membership back in 2008, is refusing to apply the sanctions either. So we see that the sanctions policy is empty. We see that the policy to support Ukraine with military means is non-existent. Zelensky has made an incredibly bitter speech about this, pointing out how Ukraine has been abandoned by its friends, and he's now offering to sit down with the Russians and discuss neutrality. All I would say about that is that I think that before the Russians are prepared to discuss neutrality with someone like Zelensky, they will want an absolute guarantee that those discussions are real, and they will insist upon the complete surrender, in effect, of the Ukrainian armed forces. I doubt that Zelensky has the authority or the power to enforce that decision on anyone in Ukraine. It's quite obvious to me that he exists in an empty box. He's going round making orders, giving decisions, saying things to which nobody pays very much attention. I have to say he's a sad, pathetic person. There are some reports this morning that he's actually fled Kiev, though whether that's really the case or not, I can't possibly begin to say. Now, about the military events, I'm not really in a position to say very much. I'm not a military person. You should follow here Alex's updates.
Yeah, but
For the
what
record,
have you heard?
for the record, I'm going to get this impression. I think that the Russians are steadily tightening their grip on the around Kiev, and at one and the same time, they are encircling the Ukrainian army in the Donbass. And I think that over the next couple of days, at most, we will see that army in the Donbass, or 60,000 men of them, probably either defeated or lay down their arms after they've been encircled. And I'm going to make a guess that before the Russians storm Kiev, which I think they're probably very rapidly going to be in a position to do, they will complete its encirclement and then perhaps demand its surrender. So we are seeing a series of events, Russians gradually tightening their grip. Well, actually not gradually, very rapidly tightening their grip. Ukrainian resistance, it seems to me, has been disorganized and chaotic. Note that it seems that they shot down one of their own fighter jets over Kiev, which, by the way, for those of you who remember, may cast an interesting perspective on another famous shootdown that took place in 2014. But anyway, that seems to me the overall position at the moment. Ineffectual sanctions, Russia gaining the support of its friends, China, India, and a steady tightening of the military noose around the government in Kiev and around the Ukrainian army in the Donbass.
All right. Real quick, hello to everyone, wherever you're joining us from. Hello to our moderators, Cosmic Rain, Alan Watson. Who else is here? Zariel, I think I saw.
Yeah.
But I'll get to them later. Thank you to our moderators. Welcome everybody from Locals. I'm going to put a link in Locals for to take some calls in about 30 minutes. So when Alexander goes to his meeting, we'll take some calls, and if Alexander finishes early, he'll come back. So and we'll just see how it goes. Maybe we'll take calls for like an hour or so, and just see how it goes. But please, everyone, jump on in about 30 minutes, okay?
Yes.
But I'll put the link in Locals, and then maybe I'll move it to YouTube as well. But what else? Real quick, Alexander, the retaliation of Russia towards the UK by prohibiting airlines into their airspace.
I think the British have taken leave of their senses. First of all, what was the point of sanctioning Aeroflot? I mean, Aeroflot is not involved in this military operation. What was predictably going to make the Russians retaliate by blocking British flights from Russian airspace. Now, that's going to have two effects. One, it means that anybody from London who wants to fly to Moscow has to do so through Europe or through some other airline. So that cuts out the British from Russia. It would probably mean it's going to make it very likely it's going to mean that you now have to make transit stops to fly there. But disastrously, it's going to make the British Airlines, uncompetitive in the key market, which is Asia, because they can't fly across Russia. They're going to have to fly via the Gulf. That's going to massively add time to the journey. Time on a journey means fuel on a journey at a time when fuel prices are rising. It's going to mean higher travel time for passengers. People will not do that. They will fly on airlines, most probably Asian airlines, that will get them there faster and cheaper. And it's going to put enormous pressure on the British airline industry. The British have become intoxicated by this affair. They are, expressing, if you like, their inner Churchill in a situation so completely, radically different from the events of the 40s that it's almost impossible to find any conceivable analogy. And they're now making decisions that are hurting them. And this is perhaps the most epic example of how that's happened.
All right, great. Let's do a couple of quick super chats. Let's see. Welcome, East Cobb, new member to the brand community. Rita Howell says, thank you for your super chat. Says, appreciate these timely updates. Thank you very much, Rita, for that. Life of Brian says, Living the Look, the Professor and Rasputin. Thank you very much for that. Monica, thank you for your super sticker. Appreciate it. Raphael says NATO and the EU are ready to negotiate also, with the smiley face emoji. That's from Raphael. Thank you very much.
Can I just make a quick observation?
Raphael's been calling this blow by blow. Yeah, go ahead, Alexander.
I know. Very quick. I mean, they've been talking for months about Russia going back to diplomacy, but they actually offer nothing. When diplomacy happens, the short answer is the Russians come along with proposals, the West rejects them. So there is no diplomacy. So they say, let's sit down and talk. But they're not prepared to talk about anything until and unless that changes, or at least anything of fundamental concern to the Russians. Until and unless that changes, all this talk about diplomacy is so much empty talk. Now, Zelensky's offered to discuss neutrality, but of course, we don't know what he means by that. So, all these calls for talks from the West at the moment, I would say that they're just empty air.
William says, do you think the West response will be short-lived?
No, I don't think so. I think, on the contrary, these sanctions are going to be there forever. But I mean, all sanctions, when they are imposed, are there forever. And of course, the great point about these sanctions is that they weaken the West's position. They're going to accelerate Russian development of their own microchip industries. They're going to intensify integration of the Russian and Chinese economies, which is what the Chinese particularly want. And they're going to lead to a deterioration in especially Europe's energy security and loss of competitiveness. But I don't really see any possibility that the EU or the US will change direction. For that to happen, there would have to be the equivalent of a political revolution, either in the EU or within Europe or in the United States. Now, I'm not saying those things are impossible. On the contrary, eventually they are likely. But with the present political setup in Europe and in the United States, I don't see these things changing at all.
I have to be quite honest. I was watching a lot of the speeches and the press conferences, both from the EU, Biden, Zelensky, and I saw Lavrov's this morning. And if anybody knows a little bit about just reading people and body language and stuff like that, von der Leyen looks like she's a complete mess. I mean, she looks like she's way out of her depth. Zelensky looks like he's a complete mess. Biden, Biden, I think no matter what speech he gives, he looks like he's out of it. But Lavrov looked very calm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Given all the pressure that is now mounted on them, he looks very calm.
I think I'm going to say something. I think for the Russians, the sentiment, at least within the government, is one of relief. I mean, they've been engaging the West in these negotiations for years, and finally, they put it all behind them, and they're taking action. So I think that there is relief rather than stress. That may come as a surprise to people, but that's very much my impression.
Alexander, let me just Jumping down on locals, message on locals from Amrit says the West has always wanted to punish Russia for some mythical Russian aggression, but in the end, Russia has always extracted from the West tenfold whenever the West interferes in Russia.
Yeah.
Great Mother Russia. That's from Amrit.
Yeah, can't disagree.
Thank you very much for that, Amrit. And Yamabush says, Otto von Bismarck, a quote, "The great question of the day will not be settled by means of speeches and majority decisions, but by iron and blood," end quote.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, Bismarck is a great one for quotes, actually. Very, very clever man. No one in Europe like him today.
And Zoran says, someone just got wrecked, son.
Yeah, true enough. I mean, they all look terrible, to be honest. I mean, the British look, as I said, collectively drunk. They probably are, by the way. Heavy drinking is very much part of the culture in Westminster, but they all look intoxicated and off their heads. I didn't see Ursula. I didn't see this press conference, but I mean, what I read
She
about it, it was rambling. And I mean, the
very
idea
stressed.
that the Russians can't refine oil, they can't develop technology to refine crude oil, it's just so silly that, you know, one wonders, one tears one's hair out and says to oneself, who are these people?
Yeah. Andreas Kiriakou, thank you very much for the super chat. I'll make an observation just for a day, just hearing people talk and stuff like that here in Greece. I mean, anecdotal, completely anecdotal. People are upset with Russia.
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah.
Completely anecdotal.
Yes.
My hunch is that, I mean, the media here has been absolutely, vicious with their reporting, but people are upset with Russia in that it appears the soft power of Europe and the United States, you know, it works. I mean,
yes,
it works.
Absolutely. But I mean, I think looking at this from a Russian point of view, what they will probably say in response to that is, look, yes, we understand people are upset with us, but what has us trying to do things the way they wanted us to do them actually achieved? Ukraine has still been this conflict on our borders. People in Donbass have gone on being shelled. The West is still talking all the time about expanding NATO East, and we're still under sanctions. So, you know, you can be upset, but, you know, we can't make our policy on the basis of your feelings.
Yeah. Buddha Man says, given that Russia will get painted in a horrible light no matter what, is there a downside for Russia going as big as possible, cleaning out Lviv, etc.? Do you think they will also take out some of the oligarchs that collaborated with the coup? Last is also an attack directly on Biden's assets in Ukraine. That's an interesting
It's an
point.
interesting point, actually. I never thought of that. I mean, there's all sorts of things that float up.
Biden's assets in Ukraine. I've never heard it phrased like that. Good.
Absolutely. I've never
Really,
heard a
really
phrase
good
like
point.
that. I'm going to make an observation. I think that the Russians increasingly feel that I mean, they probably, and I'm talking now not about every Russian, I'm talking about the policymakers, the people in the Kremlin, in the foreign ministry, in the defense ministry, wherever. I think probably at the moment they feel liberated. And the fact that there's all this criticism of them, as you rightly say, it gives them in a kind of a way freedom of action. All sorts of people that up to now they've wanted to talk to and be friends with, they've decided, look, it's just not achieving anything. Let's move on. Let's do what we have to do. Now, the oligarchs, as I understand it, have all of them left. I mean, about 2 weeks ago, they all took their private jets and flew out of Ukraine. So they're beyond, in effect, Russia's reach, at least in that sort of sense. But whether the Russians will want to go all the way to Lvov and what they're going to do there if they do, I don't know. But they've set themselves this extraordinary, ambitious program of cleansing Ukraine. And one wonders how that's going to be achieved. I think it's more likely that they're going to work towards a reconstruction of the Ukrainian government, regime change, if you like, and expect that government, that reconstructed government, to then go about the process of settling things in Western Ukraine and wherever. I don't think they're going to go and do it themselves. But, you know, I've found over the last 2 weeks that trying to predict Russian actions is extremely difficult.
Yeah. Rascal says, did you see the protests in Russia? They were just like the protests in Canada, except the Russian police were less violent. Glad I found you guys on Viva Frei.
Yeah, absolutely true.
Did
They
you
were
see the
also small.
protests?
I did. They were also very much smaller, I have to say. So I mean, you know, I've been getting comments from people all over Russia. And
I know those squares well. I know how
Exactly.
big they are. It wasn't that many people.
There weren't that many people.
Compared to how big the cities are. Yeah.
Absolutely. I've been getting comments from all across Russia, and most Russians, without any enthusiasm, are supporting this. I mean, they accept the logic of it, they accept the reasoning behind it, and they think that it is the I'm going to read. I've got an email in front of me from a Russian friend in Perm, and he says, I'm going to read some of the situation in Donbass was really bad. As you know, my sister, my second cousin, who now lives in Athens, is from Donbass. Her aunt is not far from us in Chelyabinsk. The family had to leave Donbass due to an obviously dangerous situation. So we cannot condemn Putin's steps because this means that we turn away from a part of our family. And this is very consistent from what I'm hearing from other people. And I would say that the point about him not condemning Putin's steps is because, of course, up to now, he has been a critic, an opponent of Putin.
Right. Yeah, those, I was in Moscow, gosh, 2017, 18. I forget the years, but I remember when Navalny got arrested, one of the 4 or 5 times he got arrested, and those were big protests on Pushkin Square. I mean, those were very, very big. I remember those. These looked about from what I saw in the video, 1/3 the size, 1/4 the size.
Yeah, I agree.
I'd like to say.
Yeah,
but I remember those protests were massive. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and you got to remember, Moscow's a big city. You're talking about roughly 20 million people. So
exactly. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Let's see.
And Moscow and St. Petersburg are the two most. You'll find more people in those two cities who are oppositionists, liberal-minded, those kind of things. I should also say that the kind of people who protested seem to me to be the kind of people who are most likely to protest anyway. In other words, they're not everyday mainstream Russians.
Yeah. Very liberal cities, no doubt about it. Especially St. Petersburg. Yeah. Subin, thank you for your super chat. And let's see, from Star 8, how will this impact life in Spain on a daily level in the coming year? Actually, the question could be, how will this impact Europe in the coming year? Daily life.
Well,
daily life.
How is it going to impact everybody? Food prices are rising. Energy costs are rising. They're going to get much worse. This article that I circulated with Alex, to Alex and to various other people last night, which is in the Daily Telegraph, actually made that precise point. The fact is that with Russia sitting at the center of the entire web of commodities, sanctioning Russia is an extraordinarily ill-judged thing to do. Either you sanction it, if you cut off its trade in the way that some people have been talking about, and cut it off from the world financial system, you're going to really cause yourself huge injury. And even then, if you do that, the Russians with their resources can get by. By contrast, if you try to insulate yourself to protect your economies from doing those kind of things, then you end up taking half measures. So you don't disconnect Russia from SWIFT. I would just say, Alex mentioned Gonzalo Lira earlier in the program. He said that Russia would not be disconnected from SWIFT. He was absolutely right. It hasn't happened. Neither the US nor Germany support it, and a number of other countries in the EU oppose it as well. Only the British, basically, are calling for it amongst the big powers. So they're not going against any of the major products that Russia exports. So the effect of these sanctions on the Russian economy is going to be very limited indeed. Back in 2014, the financial sanctions that they imposed did have an effect. At that time, Russian corporates borrowed in the West, and the fact that those sanctions had been imposed made it very difficult for them to roll over debts or to seek further investment. They don't do that anymore. They borrow from Russian banks in rubles, as to the extent that it borrows at all, the Russian government does. So these sanctions are going to hit air.
Do you think that Russia will resort to military measures against any country unless provoked?
No, I do. I think that the Russians would say that they have been extremely provoked, and that they've been biding their time now for at least 8 years in terms of the Ukrainian situation. I have to say, I mean, I always find war and military actions profoundly shocking, but I can't disagree with them on that. I mean, 8 years of negotiations going nowhere on a question that for the Russians is existential is a long time to ask people to sit on their hands and do nothing.
From Raphael, allow me to answer this question, please. Putin said yesterday we are part of the banking system. We are not going to destroy the banking system. That means you guys can't remove us from it.
Exactly. Well, that's entirely correct. I mean, at the end of the day, you can talk about doing this, but as we've seen, when push came to shove, they didn't do it. I mean, they've created operational problems for some banks, but they've not really done anything that comes to anything close to being a silver bullet. Russia makes $700 million a day from its exports. Just for the sake of comparison, I remember back in the early 2000s when the Chinese economy was taking off, people were talking about the fact that it was making $1 billion a day from its exports. That was, about China in the early 2000s. Now, that was spoken about in those days as an awesome figure. All right, $1 billion in the early 2000s is worth more than it is today. But it still gives you some rough idea. Russia's a much smaller country than China, but its export earnings are huge. And they're not going to be affected by this.
Yeah. Rich says Russian leaders like Ivan IV, Peter the Great, Catherine the Great, Joseph Stalin, and now Vladimir Putin have always set the geopolitical tone of their times.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely correct. And I'm glad you mentioned that because this event, whatever you may feel about it, whatever your emotional, and I mean, I was pretty stunned when it happened, but whatever your feelings, I mean, it puts Putin exactly in that line of leaders, which you've discussed. I mean, he's now unequivocally the most important leader Russia has had since Stalin. Now, I don't mean to make any other comparisons. I'm not saying that Putin and Stalin are at all the same, but in terms of global world historical consequences, he is now. You start to have to make those kind of comparisons.
Yeah. Hey Man says Nord Stream 2 is actually a cage made of money to contain the bear. Without it, what's stopping the bear to eat up everything it sees? China is also surrounded by small states that are indefensible. Yeah. Truth hurts. It's from Hey Man.
Absolutely true. And that this article that I distributed yesterday to Alex and others also made a further point, which is that, in a sense, from a Russian point of view, assuming they get a government friendly to themselves in Ukraine, Nord Stream 2 is now redundant. Because if they wanted to continue exporting gas to Europe at the same volumes, they could export it through modernized Ukrainian pipelines.
They just got another Nord Stream 2.
Yeah.
They're going to fix up the pipeline that needs repair because it's in pretty bad shape in Ukraine. Right. And they have it.
And they have it. So, it's not the event that I think Sleepy Joe and his cohorts in Washington think it is.
Yeah, no one's mentioned that if they manage to do this, if they manage to get the regime, the government that they want in Ukraine, and they are going to get the government they want in Ukraine, and control that government in Ukraine, they essentially fix up the pipeline in Ukraine, and there you have it. They now have another pipeline.
Exactly.
Yeah, and no reverse flows, and none of this stuff. None of gas or
siphoning off of that and gas and any of that. Exactly.
Yeah. Let's see. Has Boris? Will Britain follow through on the threat to expel all Russians living in Britain?
I can't believe. I mean, that would be insane, and there would probably be legal obstacles to doing it. But in this deranged atmosphere, who knows? My country, Britain, has gone completely, I'm going to say bonkers, to use a British phrase. Britain didn't do that with Germans during the Second World War. It didn't try to block German English language broadcasts, and that was during a Great War. Today, we see all these bizarre things being said, happening. And can I just say something else? I mean, Boris, everybody says what a compulsive liar he is until the topic of Russia comes up. And now suddenly he's become the great oracle of truth. I mean, everybody hangs on his words as he gives us all this stream of nonsense. And everybody, you have to believe him. I mean, there was a commentary about his latest House of Commons performance from John Crace, who's the Guardian's parliamentary correspondent, who's been enormously critical of Johnson. No, it's all praise to the great leader. I mean, it's just extraordinary to see how a confrontation with Russia transforms the sort of political situation in Britain now.
Yeah. Who is the lead Western negotiator? France failed to maintain peace. U.S. is out of touch with reality, and Germany is going scared. However, everyone blames Germany for some reason for blocking sanctions, maybe more than Hungary.
Can I just say something? This was the moment for Germany to come forward. Macron, it's clear, cannot move. He doesn't have the courage, the force of personality to do it. He clearly, deep down, doesn't believe or agree with this policy. He's thought all along that it was all a huge mistake, Western policy towards Russia, but he can't do it. He doesn't have the courage to. So the Germans, who are in an extremely strong position, potentially, if they really wanted to play their cards, could have come forward. But they are crippled by two things. Firstly, German politics, as I've discussed many times, is basically very provincial. So you have these plugging provincial politicians like Olaf Scholz. In her own way, Annalena Baerbock and Robert Habeck are very much the same. They're sort of activist types. They're completely out of their depth in grand foreign policy. And the other problem is, of course, that to the extent that there were able people around in Germany, like Friedrich Merz, who's now the leader of the CDU, the previous chancellor, Angela Merkel, made sure that they got nowhere close to the levers of power from where they might have potentially led a challenge to her. So she created a political desert, and she's left Germany adrift.
All right, we'll do one more question. We'll take some calls, Alexander. When you have to head out, just head out, and we'll continue to take calls. I'm putting the link on locals for the calls. One question, we'll take a call, and then Alexander, you can come in and out as you wish. Come in, as NATO says. The door is open. Have the Russians met their objectives in this?
No, I think, I'm not going to discuss the military side, and I'm not, the Russian General Staff doesn't share its plans with me. All I can say is that this seems to be a well-organized operation, which has moved forward at a blistering speed. That's all I can say. I mean, I'm not able to discuss further.
A stunning operation.
You'll get a stunning operation. The place to read, to learn about this is from Alex's updates. Obviously, you can find all kinds of people from each side, each giving their own accounts. You can go to the Sputnik website. You can go to the Financial Times or the Guardian or wherever to get the Western perspective. You can go to Zero Hedge, by the way, has been reasonably good, as far as I can tell. But ultimately, the person who sifts it all out, looks and compares what's happening with what people say, is able to corroborate a particular event and does so with objectivity, is Alex. And I said unequivocally, follow his updates. You can find them all on locals. They're all there. He does it on a regular basis. And that gives you an idea of what's going on.
Yeah, I try to put like 2 or 3 in the morning, pretty much. Yeah. That's it in the morning. Things change, though, from the morning to the afternoon. Things change.
Absolutely. One thing I will say, I mean, just to give you an example, of this. I mean, yesterday we were hearing all sorts of stories about these Ukrainian soldiers who heroically fought on this island, making all kinds of swear words to the Russians and all of this sort of thing. It seems what really happened was that they all surrendered and that the Russians have them all prisoner. So, I mean, that story was clear fog of war, or rather misinformation. And it's fascinating to see that the media, at least here in Britain, are still running with the Ukrainian story, even after the Russians proved it false.
Yeah. All right. Frank Zappa, GR, thank you for that super chat. Jordy Kane, thank you very much for that super chat. And Sarah, thank you very much for that super chat. Leafy Bug, are you ready? Let's bring in Leafy Bug.
Yeah.
When you come in, just make sure you have headphones, a headset, or something, and you can put your video on or not. It doesn't matter.
Right. I think this is the point, by the way, where in a moment I'm going to have to go.
Yeah. Let's see.
Hello.
Hello, you
Leafy
have the
Bug.
links. You can come in and
great.
go.
Yeah. It's great to hear your voice at last. Can I just, before I leave, thank you for your invaluable contributions on all our live streams, your excellent comments on Locals. You are one of the most wonderful and finest members of our brilliant community. And I speak for Alex.
Kind, Alexander.
And no, I'm not kind at all. I'm as always being objective and balanced in what I say.
And after you, Leafy Bug, I see Gonzalo Lira is on the line. We'll bring him in after Leafy Bug. We'll bring in Gonzalo. Leafy Bug, what's up?
Guys, I'm afraid I have to go. So thank you very much. Okay. But I will obviously catch up with all the things.
Leafy Bug.
Yes,
the floor is yours.
Thanks, Alexander. I just wanted to say I'm a little disturbed that a lot of the sort of rhetoric that you're hearing online seems very 2003, but from the Russian perspective, people are very hyped up about what the Russians are going to do in Ukraine and how could you possibly oppose them, and it has remnants of like I said, very 2003 era kind of vibes. And I'm a little worried about this goal of DNAZI ification. It's like how is that going to play out? Like I don't see that there's a very strong chance that ends up with quagmire or it doesn't get solved. Yeah. So we're talking about millions of people.
Yeah.
How does that play out? What do you think?
Yeah. To your first point about the soft power, yeah, it works. It works. There are a lot of people that are pretty ramped up about all of this, but that'll pass with time. And if this finishes quickly, believe me, there'll be something else in the news cycle. But it's really important that this finishes quickly. If it doesn't, absolutely. And somehow we end up in some sort of ongoing operation, say door to door in the cities or something like that, that would be a catastrophe for Russia. That would be for everybody.
You're just get
that would be a catastrophe.
Endless cycle of extra radicalization and then further commitment and then further radicalization, and that doesn't end anywhere good.
Yeah. So that'll be a catastrophe, and that kind of leads into your second point, which is how do you DNAZI the population, I believe. And I think actually Gonzalo actually mentioned this in one of his streams as well, which I recommend everybody follow his streams on Telegram. But I also read some other articles on this, but I think the Russians are not going to do this themselves. I think they're going to say, you know what, let's do this. Let's get our government in place that we want and let them handle it. I mean, they'll do some of the heavy lifting now as much as they can in the short term. But I don't see Russia staying in there and running around a country the size of Ukraine or trying to actually, DNAZI, all the various, people that are embedded throughout. Yeah. I mean, they're embedded throughout the government, through the military, everywhere, the civil service. So I think they're just going to say, you know what, let's get the government in place and step by step. Let's
and what of Zelensky? What's gonna happen to him? Because he's incompetent, but I don't think he does. I think he's probably more at risk for his own countrymen rather than the Russians. I just hope nothing bad happens to him.
Alexander said, no, I don't think anything bad will happen to him, but I think Alexander summed it up well. Over time, we've all started to kind of feel a little bit sorry for Zelensky. I mean, he's just way in over his head. He's just way in over his head. He's not meant to be a president of a country like Ukraine. Not at all.
One quick comment I just wanted to say. I've been watching your walkthroughs through Athens, and I'm surprised. Like Athens is, it's such a the places where you walk. It's very, like it reminds me of those images of East Berlin after the fall of the wall.
You mean the graffiti and
yeah, everything is really
that's Athens.
Oh, like what has the EU done to your country? It's terrible. Anyway, I see that Gonzalo wants to speak.
Yeah, Gonzalo's
anyway.
going to come on. Leafy Bug, thank you very, very much.
Right, cheerio.
Great to
Bye-bye.
hear you. Thank you.
Care
Thank
now.
you. Take care.
Bye.
Let's see here. Stream Gonzalo, I'm going to bring you on. Hello, sir.
Hey, Alex, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing, Gonzalo? Just let us know. Give us an update. Floor is yours.
Yeah, I'm in Kiev. I'm in downtown Kiev, and earlier today, this morning, I heard some air raid sirens, rather. Excuse me. And in general, everything is very, very quiet here in the downtown. And the word is that the Russians are coming, basically, and that there isn't anything that anyone can do, and that it is very unwise to go out on the street at this time because martial law has been declared, and you're just running a needless risk. And so we're all just hunkering down at the hotel here and just going to ride it out. I mean, there isn't anything to be done. In my own case, I think that this invasion has been just really remarkable because here, all this talk of diplomacy, of soft power and sanctions, and it's proving to be so trivial in the face of actual power. The actual power to change events and move history in the direction that you want it. And this has caught me completely flat-footed because I did not expect this to happen. I came here to Kiev on Wednesday afternoon. The flight from Kharkov, where I live, is just an hour long. And I popped over here because I had to do some bureaucratic stuff. I mean, nothing serious, and a couple of business meetings, but again, nothing really important. And I was actually thinking that the war, if the war started, would happen in a few weeks. And, Uncle Vlad caught us all by surprise, and here we are. And realistically, there's no way to get out of Kiev at this time. The planes are not running. The trains are not running. Anybody who leaves by car on a major highway is just going to be in a parking lot. A person that I know, I know them personally. Sorry about the malapropism. Well, she left Kiev yesterday at 3 p.m. And as of this morning around 11, she was barely 70 kilometers away from the border. So basically 20 hours sitting in traffic. It would literally have been faster for her to walk than to take the bus that she took to get out of Kiev. And so as a practical matter, it's just better to just sit tight and ride this out and see what happens on the other side, because there are no opportunities to move around in the country. All of the civilian infrastructure is working, at least in Kiev and in Kharkov. I have no doubt that in various neighborhoods it might be out, this or that. But in general, water, electricity, cell phone, and internet are working properly. In Kharkov, my family's internet service provider went down, so no Wi-Fi, but the cell phone internet is working fine. And so it could be a glitch or something, but it's not the Russians knocking out civilian infrastructure. That is not happening at this time. And this war, as I'm speaking to you now, it's 3 p.m. So the war has been going on for approximately 36 hours. And if the Russians really wanted to knock out the civilian infrastructure, they could do it. They could have done it in the first hour. So obviously they do not want that. The thing that I am most upset about is stories I'm hearing of the Ukrainian government handing out weapons to civilians who are untrained. I think that is grossly irresponsible. And I think that it's frankly evil, because the only thing that will happen is that the Russians will shoot on civilians. And this will, of course, cause, great PR for Ukraine. Oh, the Russians are shooting civilians. But, it's evil. Civilians should not be carrying weapons in a situation like this because they don't know how to handle themselves, whereas the Russians are professional soldiers. And so it seems that the Ukrainian government, I have to say, I'm extremely critical of this policy. I have never been openly critical of the Ukrainian government, except on this policy. I think it's wrong. It's dreadfully wrong. And the only reason it's being done is to get the PR images of dead civilians, because the Russians are not attacking civilians. Okay, I know this for a fact. And so this handing out of weapons to civilians, it's wrong. It's just so wrong on so many levels. I have to emphasize how opposed I am to it, because it's sacrificing civilians, well-meaning and very brave civilians, but untrained civilians, just for a photo op. I think that's horrifying, and that's morally wrong, unjustified. Okay, whatever you may think of either side. Now, insofar as the Russians are concerned, they seem to know what they're doing, but what is actually happening, nobody knows. And the information warfare going on here is off the charts. And anything that you hear, 5 minutes later, you will hear the opposite, or you will hear that the news, the original news, was just a lie. I mean, it's just too much propaganda from both sides, from all sides. And so it's pointless to try to figure out exactly what's going on. You have to sort of like surf the news and try to piece together what seems to be occurring. But at this time, there's no clarity as to what is going on, and the only thing that you can do is just sort of like sit and wait and see what shakes out.
Well, on a geopolitical level, Gonzalo, because you've got a good mind for these things, a good feel. How do you see this? Stepping back from it. I know you're in it right now, but just stepping back, how do you see this playing out?
I mean, I don't mean to offend anyone or get into any kind of trouble, but it seems pretty clear who's going to win this in the long run, one way or the other, because they just have more. They have just more advanced, better trained, better led, more. And I'm sure that the Russians are suffering losses in different areas, but eventually, unless something miraculous happens, I think it's fairly clear who is going to wind up the victor. What I found pretty frightening was how clear Vladimir Putin essentially said that if anybody outside of Ukraine interferes in this situation, he seemed to be implying that he would use nuclear weapons, which that's scary. No question. I mean, that's the absolute last resort that you ever want in any kind of conflict. But he basically put that on the table, it seems to me. Now, is that realistic? I don't know. We'll. I mean, I hope it isn't. Okay, obviously, but it's quite something. It's very clear that the Europeans and the Americans are they're not going to interfere with this in this situation in any meaningful way. And I find it laughable how the White House, some White House flack yesterday, went out of his way to say that any sanctions packages would not interfere with Russia's ability to deliver energy to the West. And so it's basically saying that the West is hostage to Russia. There's also another thing that I don't know. I'm betting that you and Alexander covered this already, because Alexander was the one who sent me the article. Ambrose Evans Pritchard pointed out that when and if Russia successfully gets hold of Ukraine, Russia will have a commanding position across all commodities, agro commodities and industrial metals, oil, energy. That would mean that the West would be completely beholden to Russia, and by capturing Ukraine, Russia becomes the dominant energy and agro commodity player, and they'll have all the cards. And the thing is, see, if I were Europe, I would actually be afraid of pissing off the Russians, because once this ends, one way or the other, and we all pretty much agree where it will probably end, but once it ends, if they piss off the Russians too much, the Russians might say, Mr. Schultz, Miss van der Leyen, we're not going to sell you stuff. We're not going to sell you food. We're not going to sell you oil. We don't need to. It's ours. We can sell it to whomever we want to. And we don't want to sell it to you. We want to sell it to the Asians. Of course, there'll be contracts and all the rest of it, but they can do that. And what is Europe going to do? There's no way that the United States can supply all of Europe's food and energy needs. I mean, Russia supplies not just natural gas, but oil. Roughly half of Germany's energy needs, and something like 35 to 40% of Europe's overall energy needs. if they really piss off the Russians can just step on the oxygen tube, and that's that for Europe. And all this nonsense talk of importing natural gas from Oman or liquefied natural gas from the United States, it's just absurd. The Europeans stupidly put themselves in this position of depending on the Russians. And now they're going to be paying for it. And, the Russians are going to be laughing all the way to the bank, because every dollar that goes up in price insofar as oil or natural gas is concerned is one more dollar that's going into the Russians' foreign currency
surplus.
reserve. Yeah. So they're in the driver's seat, and the Europeans have no one to blame but themselves. And the thing is, I for the life of me, I will never understand why they refuse to take the Russians' legitimate security concerns seriously.
Why?
And
Why? Why do you think?
Why do I think? Because they're stupid.
Why?
I don't think it's a big conspiracy. I think that they're just stupid and incompetent and arrogant. I mean, that's my bottom line assessment. It has nothing to do with the Illuminati. It doesn't have anything to do with Klaus Schwab or whomever. No, it's just arrogance and stupidity and living in some sort of dream world where everything goes your way. And if you don't like something, you don't have to discuss it with somebody. You don't have to negotiate. You can just throw up your hands and just get up in a huff and walk away and think that you're going to get your way. I mean, it's the attitude of a spoiled child, if you think of it. And that's what the leadership class of the West is. They're just a bunch of spoiled children. And this is what you get when you have spoiled children leading things. And my fear is that these spoiled children, out of hubris, arrogance, call it what you will resort to terrible measures that will have horrifying long-term consequences and short-term consequences. I mean, when you have stupid people like this running things, anything can happen. Yeah, that's what I think.
What do you think this means for everyday people, Gonzalo? In Europe, in the U.S.,
people, you're gonna
living our lives. What effects are we going to see from this?
More expensive food, more expensive gasoline, more expensive life. Inflation is a tax on working people, and you're going to see that kind of inflation, runaway inflation. That's my thinking, and they're going to blame it all on Russia, and partly it will be on Russia, but also just the sheer incompetence of the leadership class. Yeah.
What do you think the U.S. and Europe and the U.K. should do now? At this moment, what do you think? If you were consulting them, what would you tell them to do? You've seen the sanctions now. You've heard the rhetoric. What would you tell them?
The sanctions are a joke, man. Oh, we're really going to get you, Mr. Putin. We're really going to get you this time. Oh, yeah, we're going to sanction you. Oh, yeah, you're never going to be able to go to London or Paris. Oh, no. Like he goes there every weekend shopping or some shit like that. Sorry.
Borrell said something like that, actually. Yeah. Borrell said that the oligarchs are not going to be able to go shopping in Italy, in Milan.
Yeah, I'm sorry for being so vulgar, but I mean, when this level of stupidity, is flung at your face, vulgarity is the only proper response, because it's just stupid. Look, the sanctions packages, the biggest sanction that they could possibly impose are cutting Russia out of SWIFT. And you and Alexander and I have discussed privately this particular issue of cutting Russia out of SWIFT. The Americans can't allow that to happen. Right now, they're blaming the Germans and the Italians and the Greeks, I think, for stopping their hand. Like, oh yeah, we really want to cut out Russia from SWIFT, but the Germans and the Italians are holding our hand. We want to smack around the Russians with SWIFT, but it's the Germans and the Italians who are keeping us from doing it. That's a lie, because it's not the Germans and the Italians who are keeping the Americans from pulling the plug on Russia and SWIFT, but rather the Federal Reserve. Yeah. That's the organization that's stopping the Biden administration, because the Federal Reserve knows that if they pull Russia out of SWIFT, the Russians will start settling their huge commodity sales in any other currency except the dollar. And you see, a reserve currency is not magic. A reserve currency, what is it? It means that other countries, third parties, they need your currency to settle their trade. And therefore, this creates an artificial demand for your currency that allows you to borrow to your heart's content. It props up your currency. it's not like a magic status. It's not like, you're the prettiest currency of the ball. No, it means that other countries use your currency. But if you prohibit them from the essentially the arterial system of the foreign markets, of foreign exchange, and prevent them from settling in your currency, your reserve currency, well, then all of a sudden your reserve currency is no longer the reserve currency. It just becomes any other currency, and some other currency steps into the breach, like the euro, like the renminbi. I mean, personally, I would think that the euro would be perfect to step into that breach. And that would mean that all of a sudden nobody or fewer people have a strong demand for dollars. And that would mean that all of a sudden US sovereign debt, i.e. the US Treasury market, would get into a lot of trouble, because you have to understand the mechanism of the currency markets. What happens is that, Alex is I don't know, Kuwait, and I'm Japan, and I have yen, but the only currency that Alex and I use for Japan, me, to buy Alex's oil, Kuwait's oil, Alex, is dollars. And so me, Japan, I go out with my yen, which I've earned by selling whatever, and I go out into the markets and I buy dollars. And by buying, I'm propping up the price of the dollar. I mean, that's what you basically do. Remember, supply and demand. I'm telling you, I'm speaking to you, Alex, but of course I'm speaking for the benefit of our audience. And when you, as a country, as a company, as a person, you go out and buy something, well, that's demand, right? And so you are demanding that good or service, and a currency is just another good or service. And so as you demand it, you prop up the price. And so I go out, I buy dollars, I take my dollars, and I go to you, Kuwait, i.e. Alex, and buy your oil. And I give you those dollars. And you take these dollars and you want to put them in a piggy bank. And what's that piggy bank? The US Treasury market. Because Treasury market, what is it? It's debt. You buy a Treasury bond and you receive a small income from that Treasury debt, which is, of course, the yield of the Treasury bond, whatsoever that yield may be. That's the whole definition of it. And so, me as Japan, I demand dollars. I buy dollars so that I can buy your oil. And you take my dollars and sell me the oil, and take my dollars and plug them into Treasury bonds. And it's a circulatory system of the reserve currency. And that's what allows the United States to borrow so much money to prop up its lifestyle, prop up its government that spends all this money on all kinds of programs, everything from Social Security to welfare programs to the pensions of veterans to the Green New Deal programs and all that idiocy. I mean, everything that the United States government spends money on, well, it gets that money from the people who are paying the US government to buy its debt, the US Treasury bonds. Now, if you interrupt this cycle, if me, Japan, discover that you, Russia, are selling oil in euros, or perhaps you're selling them in yen, well, then I don't have to buy dollars now, do I? I have to buy euros, or perhaps I have to buy yen, which I have because that's what I produce. And so it'll be better for me. I mean, changing from dollars to euros is not going to be a big deal. Changing from dollars to yen would actually be beneficial. And in fact, if you're Russia, it would be smart for you to create some sort of currency clearinghouse where somebody could come with any currency and put money into your clearinghouse, and you automatically deliver the equivalent of your commodity to that person bringing whatever currency. And that way you can have a commanding position over all currencies, because your commodity, your pivotal position in the commodities market allows you to control the exchange rate of all the commodities. I mean, I'm saying this is a very outlier case, an outlier possibility that, it hypothetically is possible. As a practical matter, it would be extremely difficult. But
Russia's trying to do these things with China. I mean, they are piloting these types of things.
Yeah, exactly. And so, the Americans are just the Europeans. They're squandering everything that took 80 years to build, because the SWIFT system and the petrodollar, which is basically the system that I described, the dollar as the reserve currency, it took a long time to build these institutions.
and they're being squandered by the current generation of leadership that doesn't know any better. They're just fools, and so it's a tragedy. Yeah. But anyway, to go back to the actual war that's going on here, I've rambled. I'm so sorry. I hope I haven't bored the
No, everyone
bejesus
is
out of
everyone loves to hear from you, Gonzalo, including
you.
myself. I mean, I think your insight is valuable, especially now that you're in Kiev. But even more so, I think you have a really excellent mind for these things, and I urge everybody to plug into your Telegram channel and your video updates. I know I've been watching them regularly, and they're really, really good, and they really give people a good view as to what's going on. But you also give a good, bird's eye view of everything that's happening, and I think that's
look. Bottom line about Kuwait,
that's key.
Excuse me, about Ukraine. I think that this is a tragedy, an avoidable tragedy, and I think in the next few hours, it's really going to depend what happens with the Ukrainian leadership. And I think that look, at the end of the day, there are two possibilities. Either this whole thing just collapses, and in short order, in the next 2-3 days, or perhaps more, perhaps a week's time, we have some clear order, and everything becomes basically the Russians wind up controlling everything. Or this becomes the other extreme. It becomes Lebanon. It becomes Syria. It becomes an endless, destructive kind of civil war with no end. I know that what the Russians want, obviously, because they want it not just because they don't want to harm themselves in their own position in Russia, but also because they see no value in having internecine wars with Ukraine, which you have to take them at their word. They view Ukraine as just a cousin country. They don't view it as a foreign land. And so, I hope that things work out quickly. But yeah, it's a tragedy, and it could have been avoided. Well, all such conflicts could always have been avoided. But there's no question that Putin was the one who invaded. He's the one responsible directly for what is going on, and this is an invasion. Let's not pretend otherwise. The reasons for it are very clear, and I think historically, people, if they are honest, they will realize that probably the trigger was when certain elements of the Ukrainian government started arguing that they should have nuclear weapons.
I was just about to say that.
I beg your pardon?
I was just about to say that. That was the dumbest statement Zelensky could have ever possibly made. And I'll take it one step further and hear your thoughts. No one at that Munich conference stood up right away and said, whoa, 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 stop. No one. Not Harris, not van der Leyen, not Olaf Scholz, no one. They just let him talk all day about acquiring nuclear weapons.
That's me mildly agreeing with you. Yes, you're absolutely right, Alex.
Where is our leadership?
They should have just shut that down instantly. It's
exactly
insane. Okay. And instead, they just kind of like wound him up and egged him on with this insanity, by not saying anything that was a tacit endorsement. It was insane. And look, as a legal matter, those nuclear weapons belong to Russia, the inheritor of the Soviet Union, because it was Soviet weaponry.
Yes.
As a legal matter. Now, as a practical matter of today, not of 1994, when all of those weapons were returned to Russia, but as a practical matter of today, you want to denuclearize the world, and for one country to say, "Oh, we need nuclear weapons to defend ourselves," and the other countries sort of like either not saying anything or nodding along, no. And I think that retrospectively will be viewed as the trigger, much more than the alleged shelling by the Ukrainian army in the Donbass. Because to tell you the truth, we will never know if that was actually the Ukrainian army or if it was some sort of false flag on the part of the Russians. Because the West is constantly saying that the Russians are going to pull a false flag, but sometimes your enemies can be saying things that are true. Okay, just because and both sides, all sides, have done false flags of different sorts. Gulf of Tonkin, anybody, and so what's real and what's not rather. how could I put it? Let me take a step back. The amount of information warfare and propagandizing and manipulation of perception that's been going on is off the charts. It's remarkable. With more information, more possibility of information manipulation, and you don't really know what's real and what's not. And so I want to end this as I started it by saying, you can't really believe anybody. Okay. I mean, even like in my accounts, what I say, and I tell people on my Telegram channel that, listen to me, but don't believe everything I say, because I could be very wrong. I mean, hell, I was convinced that there wasn't going to be an invasion, and I came to Kiev of all places. There's a meme floating around of my face on the body of that, that boy, that middle school boy with braces, right? And on the top it says, decided to leave the West, wound up being invaded in Ukraine. It's a very funny meme of me. I mean, I have to admit, I get a huge kick out of it when I'm turned into a meme. And the point is, see, I was completely wrong. I never thought in a million years that Vladimir Putin would invade Ukraine, but here we are. And so,
well, I wouldn't say that. You said, no, I mean, you were on record and you said, if there's one thing that will provoke Russia to invade, it'll be attacking the Donbass or any other really crazy provocation. And we got that. We got the shelling on Donbass, and we got the craziness from the nuclear statement.
Yeah. But
I mean,
but I never thought that. Well, it doesn't.
It's funny. Putin was true to his word. I mean, in a way, he said.
Well, he was unpredictable. He was unpredictable. The one thing about the guy, that retrospectively, everything he does is usually very rational, always very rational, to tell you the truth. I can't recall a single incident when anything he's done has been irrational. And it's always very clear after the fact. But at the time, it always catches people by surprise. And what is interesting is that his moves are always so decisive. And that's the thing that is remarkable. I remember when we were talking about how incremental the moves were that Putin was making, of just sort of like recognizing the Donbass and moving in peacekeeping forces. It seems so incremental. And then all of a sudden, this lightning strike, this decisive, full-throated invasion. And with this clear objective. I mean, it's obvious that his objective, the military objective of the Russian elite, is take over the whole country. They're not going to leave a single square inch of it outside of Russian control. And I think that the West recognizes this, and it scares them. Okay, a lot of people, on some of the boards, 4chan and whatnot, they're saying, "Oh, it's taking the Russians so long to conquer Ukraine and blah blah, and they're failing and blah blah." They don't understand the size of Ukraine. I've crossed all of Ukraine on motorcycle. It's a huge country. It's huge. Okay. It's the largest country in Europe, apart, of course, from Russia itself. And from end to end, from the easternmost to the westernmost tip, is a greater distance than between the Ukrainian-Polish border and Paris. It's an enormous country. And so you have to understand the distances that you're talking about. And so the fact that they have advanced as they have over the last 36 hours, anybody with any kind of military background or a little bit of military knowledge will recognize that it's been a success. No question that there are going to be failures along the way, and captured soldiers and missions that fail to achieve specific tactical objectives. That's normal in a war. But in general, they're winning. And it's just a matter of time before they roll up the whole country. Right now, the last word I'm getting is that they are about 25 miles from the center of Kiev, where I am located at this time. And that's a remarkable achievement. And they know what they're doing. Okay. And so, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm a little bit.
Are you scared? Are you scared?
Me personally? No, I'm excited, to tell you the truth. I perhaps this is a horrible way to be, but I guess I'm a horrible person. But I'm not personally afraid. I'm very relieved because I've been in constant contact with my family back in Kharkov, and they are perfectly safe. I've seen them on video link, and I've, of course, spoken to them, and they're perfectly fine. And so I'm not concerned for their safety at all. And I know that they're in a very secure location, and there's no problem in that regard. And so that's a huge relief. And so far as me personally, No, I'm not really afraid. I'm really excited. I think this is really cool. I mean, again, that makes me a bad person. Fine, I'm a bad person, but it's world historical. And by just sheer chance, and you could say dumb luck or bad luck, I find myself in the eye of this hurricane, which, by the way, and I want to end with this note that we can explore a little bit before I go, because I don't want to bore your audience with all my ramblings. But I do believe that this is the beginning of a global war. And I think that the Chinese are going to use this opportunity to make their moves in the Far East. I think that as it becomes clear over the next few days that the Russians have the situation firmly in hand, I think the Chinese are going to start to make their moves in the Far East. And I think, frankly, I would not be surprised if in 10 years or so it comes out that there were protocols signed and agreed to by Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, and not just those two individuals, but like all of the echelons of both Chinese and Russian bureaucracy and defense ministries and foreign policy establishments, that they had agreed that if one went to war, the other would go to war. And I think that a war with a war of the Chinese to retake Taiwan is in the offing, and I think that's going to happen in short order. And I think, and this is me being totally speculative, and if your audience can tell me that I'm just full of it, that's fine. But this is what I think will happen. I think that the Chinese will realize that they want to capture Taiwan in one piece. So they're going to decide not to invade Taiwan, but to knock out Taiwan's protector. Because after all, Taiwan is a very small country with a very, very big bodyguard behind it. If they knock out the bodyguard, eventually Taiwan will fall. It's inevitable. Taiwan is an island, and it's not a self-sufficient island. And so I think that the Chinese move, and this is my speculation, but I think that if I were in their position, this would be the right move. It would be a preemptive knockout blow against the Americans. Something as complete as the Russian invasion of Ukraine, something that has been completely planned and happens on multiple fronts simultaneously, one big blow against the Americans at the same time to knock them out, not just hurt them, but just knock them out of the Western Pacific, knock them out of the South China Sea, just blow them out of the water. And I think that is the Chinese plan, especially now that the Beijing Olympics have wound down, and the situation in Ukraine is going on. I think that's their next move. I could well be wrong. I've been wrong so many times before. I'm the first to admit it. But it just seems reasonable. And I think that this is going to go global. And I think also, too, that some of the sanctions and all the nonsense that the Europeans and the Americans are talking about, they're only going to hurt themselves. The sanctions package and whatnot, it just gives the Russians the incentive to just turn away from Europe, cut off Europe, and America, too, because a lot of people don't seem to realize that America imports Russian oil, too. And so I think that the Russians might well say, I don't need the hassle of you Europeans and Westerners and Americans, And so, I think that it's going to be really interesting. Yeah.
When you look at, the way the Russian officials are speaking when they're doing their press conferences, and me and Alexander were talking about Lavrov, and compared to like von der Leyen and Biden, all these people, the Russians, like Alexander says, they seem almost relieved. In a way, there's like a sense of relief that they've ripped the Band-Aid off. Nord Stream 2, Ukraine, all of this, and now they can just, move forward. You get that feeling when you look at their body language and their demeanor.
No more pretense, no more pussyfooting.
No more our partners in the West and our friends in Europe. It's like that's all gone.
Did you read Putin's Empire of Lies speech?
You posted that on your channel.
I think that speech.
Tell our audience what's your insight on that speech.
Okay, well, Putin gave a speech right after the actual invasion, and he basically, it's a declaration of war against the United States,
It's not he's saying Russia was going to fight against the Americans and we will win. No, no, no. It was a cultural war. And basically, it says that in the speech, he said that the United States is an empire of lies, and it spreads its lies to all of its allies. And it promulgates, it pushes, it advocates unnatural ideas. It's a remarkable speech. I can have it. I can have it on my phone, and I want to read part of it, but I don't know if I switch over if the feed will get cut. Let me try, and if my feed gets cut,
give it a try. Give it a try.
Yeah, hang on. Do you
We can still hear you. Yeah, we still hear you. Yeah.
You still hear me and see me? Okay, great.
Yeah.
So let me read the pertinent passage. It's a remarkable speech, and I'll read what I wrote in the thing in the post I did on Telegram. It said Putin's empire of lies speech. For all intents and purposes, it's a declaration of war against the United States. He gave it on February 24th as the war in Ukraine was breaking out. So, and at that time, that's when I'd had the opportunity to read it. And here is a 3-paragraph section. It's a bit long, but I think it's very important that you, I'm speaking to Alex's audience, that you listen to it carefully, because it's very provocative and very insightful and very damning of the United States and the West. Putin said in his speech, incidentally, US politicians, political scientists, and journalists write and say that a veritable empire of lies has been created inside the United States in recent years. It is hard to disagree with this. It is really so. But one should not be modest about it. The United States is still a great country and a system-forming power. All its satellites not only humbly and obediently say yes to and parrot it at the slightest pretext, but also imitate its behavior and enthusiastically accept the rules it is offering them. Therefore, one can say with good reason and confidence that the whole so-called Western Bloc, formed by the United States in its own image and likeness, is, in its entirety, the very same empire of lies. As for our country, said Putin, after the disintegration of the USSR, given the entire unprecedented openness of the new modern Russia, its readiness to work honestly with the United States and other Western partners, and its practically unilateral disarmament, they immediately tried to put the final squeeze on us, finish us off, and utterly destroy us. This is how it was in the 1990s and the early 2000s, when the so-called collective West was actively supporting separatism and gangs of mercenaries in southern Russia. What victims, what losses we had to sustain, and what trials we had to go through at that time before we broke the back of international terrorism in the Caucasus. We remember this and will never forget. Properly speaking, the attempts to use us in their own interests never ceased until quite recently. They sought to destroy our traditional values and force on us their false values that would erode us, our people from within, the attitudes that have been aggressively imposing on their countries, attitudes that are directly leading to degradation and degeneration because they are contrary to human nature. This is not going to happen. No one has ever succeeded in doing this, nor will they succeed now. I mean, that's powerful stuff. I don't know if you lost my feed. Hello?
We heard everything. We heard everything, and now we see you. Yeah.
Okay, good. I mean, that is powerful, powerful stuff. I mean, he's basically saying, number one, in those 3 paragraphs, he's saying, the United States is imperialist, and it's an empire built on lies. And it's an imperialism that they have imposed on their so-called allies of the Western Bloc. And number 2, he is blaming this empire of lies for the misery of Russia during the 1990s and 2000s, and also the almost disintegration of the Russian state. And he's completely accurate on this, by the way. The Russian state during the 90s, I mean, Russia was treated like a cheap prostitute. It was they were actively trying to destroy the Russian nation and just take it apart and feed on it like hyenas, And I mean, this is undisputed. Matt Taibbi has written a great deal about this and is extremely interested. And he blames it on the West. And then he finally says, the values of this empire of lies are values that are anathema to us, and we want no part of them. And we're going to fight them because they are decadent and degenerate, and they violate the conception of human nature. This is powerful stuff. This is basically a cultural war. And so once you view it that way and understand the stakes, you realize why the wokesters who are in control of the European and American leadership class, they hate Putin. They want to demonize it because he's got their number. He has called them out. He knows exactly who they are. They are decadent and degenerate. And he wants no part of that for Russia, no part of that for the Eastern European peoples, no part of that in any fashion whatsoever. And he's willing to fight for it. He's willing to fight against it. And my thoughts here is that I think that a lot of the political right, the dissident right in the West, they instinctively recognize this of Putin. Because, see, Putin is not saying this, is not spending all this time on these issues, just to, win some minor little group within the West. No, he believes it. I mean, if somebody says something, you have to take them at their word. You can't pretend or think that they're actually thinking of something else. No. What they say is what they believe. It's very, very difficult to articulate what you truly believe. And so when somebody does so, you take them at their word. And, paragraphs like those 3 that I read that are admittedly long, but they're crucial. They tell you what this man thinks. And he thinks that the West is decadent and degenerate and wants no part of that for Russia because he does not want to see his people degenerate the way that they have degenerated in the West. And that's why I think so many people on the right and the dissident voices, be they right, center, or left, in many ways sort of like feel comradeship with Putin because they instinctively recognize that he is as against the wokesters as they are. And so that's what's going on. And a lot of people think, these people in the West are fascists and they see Putin as a fascist. No, they see him as a man who believes in human dignity and resists the decadence and degeneracy that's been going on in the West for so long. I mean, I can only speak for myself. I mean, I look at the West and it's decadent and degenerate and disgusting. I could live in the West right now. I have the passports and I have the clean bill of health insofar as legal issues are concerned. I mean, I've never even been arrested, let alone charged with anything. I could live wherever I want in the West. I want no part of the West because it is decadent and degenerate. And we all know it. We all see it. We all see these, these trans people, swimming in girls' college swim meets and defeating them by, pool lengths. And everybody just absurdly follows the lie that, oh, yeah, they're women too. All this decadence and degeneracy. It's disgusting. And Putin is calling it out. And because of it, the West, the leadership of the West, again, instinctively recognizes that he wants no truck with their decadence and degeneracy. And that's why they hate him so much, because they recognize an enemy. See? I mean, he is an enemy of this stuff. And you could say that he's a dictator, which is true. You can say that he's an authoritarian, which is true. You can say all kinds of very true accusations about him. But he's right. And that's the thing that tears them apart, these wokesters in West. He's right. And he's called them out. And that speech, the Empire of Lies speech, which I recommend everybody read it. And Alex, I'd ask you, for your audience's sake, I'm sure many of your audience members would be very interested in reading it. It is not some screed. It is not, some crazed ramblings. It's very coherent and it's devastating. And it is a call to action against the West. And I, for one, find it impossible to dismiss. And I think that open-minded people who read it carefully will come to the same conclusion, that you cannot dismiss what he has said. Yeah, that's what I think.
he was confronted with this question during one of his press conferences about the woke culture, and he pretty much summarized what you just read right now. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no doubt about it. But Gonzalo, what's the link that people can find you and that speech?
You can find me on Telegram. That's where I'm posting, because what happened was that I have the CRP channel, and that was suspended for just some nonsense. Right? I was suspended for 90 days, and that 90-day suspension was supposed to end at the end of March. But all of a sudden, I've discovered that I'm live again. I'm able to post again. I wasn't even notified by YouTube, and so that it means I'm going to have to rearrange my plans. But the problem is that all of my material, my videos and whatnot that I'm going to post is in Kharkov, so that's going to have to wait. But for now, you can find me on Telegram, and you can definitely find me on Patreon. Alex, I do believe you have both links. I'd appreciate it if you could post them.
I'll get those links and I'll put them up. Yeah.
And
Patreon and Telegram, they just search Coach Red Pill at Coach Red,
I think it's
at
called
Gonzalo Lira.
No, I think it's called Real CRP. Actually, let me go and check it. Let me go and check it. And if I wink out, you'll tell me. Hang on a second. Yeah, it's called Real CRP.
Real CRP. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so just go to Telegram, everybody. Real CRP, and that's where you can plug into just really, really great content. And
yeah, I mean,
just doing a great job.
I don't have any like editorial line, because you and Alexander are so disciplined. You're on point, right? And I post whatever is on my mind, and so it's more of a hodgepodge. Sometimes I post like silly memes, sometimes incredibly wholesome content, and sometimes just decadent and degenerate stuff that I think is funny. So yeah, it's a hodgepodge. I mean, I am not so serious and disciplined as you two gentlemen are, and that's why it's always a pleasure being on your show, because you guys, by your very demeanor, you force me to be like, I have to pretend to be smart, okay, and it's really hard.
I wouldn't say you're pretending.
Long.
Like I said, I think that I don't know what your future plans are, Gonzalo, with your content and your broadcasting, but there's no doubt that you have a definite talent for analyzing these situations.
Well, and like I tell everybody, and I have no problem telling it to your face and to your audience, you guys, as far as I'm concerned, produce the best, the smartest geopolitical analysis. And I really am liking your videos, the ones that you're walking and talking. They're cool. I'm liking them a lot. And I like the fact that you keep changing what you're doing with your videos, because Alexander is he's like all it was the same, good day, and he does his things, and whereas you mix it up, and so it's always a delight to watch you guys and your show. I'm just total fanboying you guys, okay, because you guys really are the best geopolitical analysis. And I can't wait for you guys to step up insofar as your stage is concerned, because I think that you guys ought to be on like more mainstream platforms or platforms with a wider reach, because your analysis is always so on point, And even when I disagree with it, your analysis is always so rational and so reasonable that it forces me to say, well, I disagree with him, but maybe they're right. Maybe these two Alexes are just like, well, they're smarter than me, so maybe they are right, and forces me to reevaluate. And that's something that's greatly appreciated. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I think, the game that we're playing right now and trying to analyze all of this. I mean, we're just a bunch of guys just trying to figure out the world, but it's tough. It's tough. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to figure out what's going through Putin's head. And I was going to say it's hard to figure out what's going through Biden's head, but I think
well, I don't think anything's going through his head.
Ice cream, bedtime, vanilla chocolate.
Yeah, and I think that he's terrified that the kind of corruption that he has been involved in will emerge if the Russians successfully take over Ukraine, because it will emerge, because they will find the documentary evidence, and they're going to parade it across the whole world. And by the way, a parenthesis. I mean, I do have to go, unfortunately, but parentheses I want to make. Isn't Kamala Harris the most horrifying person you've ever seen? The most incompetent person? And
they sent her to Munich. They sent her to Munich.
Unbelievable. I mean, it's shocking. You know, not even Liz Truss is that just dumb. I mean, where do they find these people? I mean, honestly, it's an honest question. Because my God, I've never seen anybody that stupid. It's just shocking. I mean, honestly, how did she get there? And the notion that she's going to be on the Supreme Court, that they're going to kick her upstairs. You know, a woman who goes from failure to failure, and she keeps going up the career ladder. How does that happen?
That's the story of our elites. They always get promoted up. The more they fail, the higher up they go.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and unbelievable. Anyway, Alex, I do unfortunately have to leave.
Gonzalo, stay safe. Stay safe. Real CRP, everybody, on Telegram and Patreon. I will be putting the link up on Patreon. I'm going to find the link and put that up as well. I highly, highly recommend that you plug into this gentleman right here. Stay safe, okay?
Thank you very much. I will hope to be safe. Yes. Take it easy, and thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Bye. All right. Thank you, Gonzalo, for that. I'm going to find the link, everybody, real soon and put that up to his Patreon, but real CRP. And Alan, are you ready, Alan, to jump in? We're going to take some more calls, and I'll put that link back up on Locals as well for the calls. And hopefully Alexander comes back as well. But Alan, I'm going to add you into the stream. Alan, are you there?
Hi, Alex. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Alan. How are you doing?
Terrific. Wow. I don't think I could ever beat following Gonzalo. Agree with him totally on most things. Where do they get these people? Where do they get these people? Anyway,
where do you think? What do you think?
This is a huge diplomatic mistake and embarrassment for the West, isn't it? I mean, it could have been sorted. It could have been stopped. Any bloodshed. I'm so upset. If people die, this could have been stopped. The diplomacy of the West is it's beyond belief. It's incompetence. But just to say, I watched the parliamentary question times in the British Parliament and the debate on Afghanistan in the British Parliament recently, and I despair. It was so gung-ho. I think they realise they're making it. This is going to blow back on them. The British people see all this hate Russia, oh, this, that, 1939, blah, 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 and they can see through it. And I think the politicians in Britain anyway, the government, and the really useless opposition who just did not have anything concrete or any criticism of what the government was doing in the UK, they're going to suffer at the polls because of this, and I despair completely.
You think they're going to suffer at the polls? You really do?
Oh, absolutely. I think we're going to see another party or other parties come into play, and they realise it. I think they're terrified. This is one reason why they're going, oh, we've got to fight, we've got to do this, we've got to do that, and they do nothing that has any effect. It's because they're frightened of their positions. I think probably in America as well. And going to what Gonzalo said about the start of a bigger war, a bigger conflict, I'm thinking he's right. I'm thinking who's going to take advantage of this? Who's going to see the weakness of Europe, the weakness of the EU, the weakness of this abysmal administration in the US and take advantage? And I'm thinking Middle East. That terrifies me. It terrifies me if something blows up in the Middle East. I'm just frightened, like a lot of other people. I've got no confidence in our leadership in the UK. Anyway, I'll leave it at that before I say something.
One quick question before you go. Do you think this was a good distraction for Boris, given all his other domestic problems that he has?
Yes, to a certain extent. Yes, definitely. But I think you've got to see it in a wider sense. Distraction for the ruling elite in the UK. all of them. It's a distraction for them because they're all under pressure. They're all pretty incompetent, the ones that get on the TV. They've got the mainstream media. The BBC is trying, but it's so biased, it's unbelievable. It's a distraction for the British political elite. And it's their incompetence. And I think they're beginning to realize there's going to be a blowback. Because nobody, it's so obvious that this is not what it appears, what they're making it out to be.
Well said. Well said, Alan. Anything else that you want to say?
I just thank you. Thank you to everybody on the stream. You've got some marvelous people there, and Balias particularly. Anyway, thanks very much, Alex. Look forward to seeing you in the future.
Take care. Bye-bye. All right. Thank you, Alan, for that. Let's bring in Hawk to the stream here. Hello. Are you with us, Hawk? Hawk. Husk. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Husk? Hawk. Are you there? Going once, going twice. If you can hear me, Hawk, I'll remove you from the stream. Check your mic or your input from the settings. Down below, you'll see a link that says settings. I'm gonna put you in the waiting room, and I'm gonna bring in Buddhaman. I'm not gonna put you out of the call, Hawk. I'm just gonna put you in the waiting room. Buddhaman.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Okay?
Yep. Hear you and see you.
Right.
How are you doing?
Great. It's quite an honor to be on with you guys. It's
great to have you.
It's so refreshing to have like a bit of truth, especially about global politics, because it's just, I mean, most of the media is so, and even alternative media because they derive, especially about Ukraine and sort of Russia affairs. There's just so much, so much misunderstanding. So I lived in Odessa for a year during the Color Revolution, during the Orange Revolution. And I have a ex-wife who's Ukrainian, and I think the biggest tragedy of what's going on in Ukraine is the fact that, and speaking especially with my ex-wife about this, is the people, we talk about what the U.S. is doing, what Europe's doing, what Russia's doing. There's no voice for the Ukrainians in all of this. There's no self-determination. There's no, I mean, it's the tragedy is kind of the future of Ukraine. And go ahead.
What do you think the vibe is right now in Odessa? Give us your thoughts, since you know the city.
I think it's a mix. I do think there's a deep sadness that it's like it is. I'm getting a sense that a lot of people in Ukraine would like self-determination, and they have not had it. And there was at least kind of this hope. I mean, I think it was a false hope. NATO and EU kind of holding out a carrot, although I think kind of the U.S. policy was always just to kind of smash and loot, not really bring it in. But I certainly know when I was there during the Color Revolution, to just give some context to it, in Odessa, the two parties of the Color Revolution were the orange and the blue, where the orange was the pro-Western and the blue was the pro-Russian. But the majority of people in Odessa were flying a green flag, just saying like, it doesn't matter, it's all BS. There's like either one of those is not going to be that. But there was sort of a hope at that time. And what's kind of interesting, the blue representative that lost during the Orange Revolution was Yanukovych, who was then actually Russia was able to bring him back into power, and he was the one deposed in the coup in 2014. So, despite the Orange Revolution, Russia was effectively able to counteract that slowly over time and kind of bring in who they were, which is, why the U.S., threw that coup. And when you look at how the U.S. threw the coup, with sort of funding Nazi groups and stuff like that, you could see their intention wasn't to create a democratic republic that they were going to bring into the EU. I mean, it was never about that.
How do people in Ukraine feel about or felt about the events that went in 2014 that went down? I mean, I know Odessa was actually a place where you had a terrible tragedy as well.
Yeah, I mean, Odessa.
Fire,
I mean, that was incredible. I think it really just depends on the part of Ukraine that you are in. I mean, because to say that Ukraine's kind of a homogenous place, it's kind of like, UK. Scotland is not England, and and you've talked about kind of the Lviv being the Banderites, and it's no. I mean, like, if you're in Ukraine, Odessa is kind of like the southern city of comedy, and was ethnically kind of more Russian, and the East Ukraine has always been more Russian aligned, Russian speaking, and then all the groups closer to Poland, and really, I mean, it's been kind of that. I mean, I remember after 2014. Well, it wasn't even 2014, because they started doing it at the Color Revolution. When I was there in 2005, after they had the Color Revolution, that's when they were first trying to implement Ukrainian as the language, and all the official documents in the country had to be Ukrainian instead of Russian. So you could see that there was a push to kind of push Russia out of Ukraine with the Color Revolution. And what was interesting too is we had to get some official documents done in Ukraine in 2004, and there was no one that could actually translate or speak Ukrainian in Odessa. We had to go do a whole bunch of searches to find people that I could actually prepare documents in Ukrainian. But I also kind of disagree with what Gonzalo was saying about like the euro being able to take over. I think really a lot of what's going on right now, and this is just my perspective talking to friends. I'm in London right now. I have a lot of banker friends, and we're kind of at the end of our currency system right now. I mean, you're seeing the inflation go up crazy all over the Western system, and they've got to replace it with something. And so it looks like they're trying to have some kind of controlled takedown, but this also is what, people that are outside the financial system, like Russia, now have a lot more power because they're not part of that system. And so I don't think, the whole reason of them not like SWIFT being off the table, of canceling SWIFT, is because it's quite important. I mean, the whole control grid of the Western elites is through the financial system. So if you're unplugging Russia to build their own financial system, say with China, and right now we've got a whole lot of blockchain, other things emerging, digital currencies. It's very easy and China has their own digital RMB. They're trying to push it through their Belt and Road project really heavily. And so if you pull Russia out of SWIFT, all of a sudden, what are they going to do? I mean, they may use the euro, but they may just go all in China with the digital currency of Asia. And, and then what's the hope of integrating them back into a Western system of finance?
Not going to happen.
And the other reason I don't think the euro is going to be dominant is that all the currencies, if you're going to have a reserve currency, it's enforced by military. And Europe doesn't have a military. So how would they ever enforce currency at any level? The US can enforce currency. And you kind of almost see that happening, like say in Libya, they were talking about leaving the dollar, and all, what happens. The reserve currency is backed by the military. The reason the U.S. needs that military is to keep the reserve currency in place. So, So.
No, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. It's the military that enforces the use of the reserve currency, and Libya was a perfect example. No doubt about
Yeah.
that. No doubt about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say the last thing is right now, I kind of wonder if it is going to get pressed. Well, there's two other comments I have. One is as far as, they do need a distraction in the West. I mean, being in London, I kind of work in and around healthcare, and I've been going to some high-level healthcare meetings. Right now, there's like 10 million people on the waiting list for a procedure with the NHS in Britain. That's like 1 out of every 6 people.
Wow.
They had like a few hundred people several years ago on a 1-year wait to get a procedure. That bumped after COVID to over 400,000, and they had people on a 2-year. So how Britain's going to recover from that, I don't know. But I have a feeling that's not just Britain. It's, I mean, certainly what's going on in the U.S. with the healthcare is just a mess. And, we haven't seen the end of the small business disruption and the economic devastation. You get happy news everywhere, but it's just cover for something deeper that's going on. And I think also just the big question, anyone that lives in the West is like, who's really in charge? Who's really in charge? Obviously that, like, Trudeau and people are getting marching orders, and you saw the Build Back Better roll out uniformly. I mean, it's just, it's not, I mean, these people in government who are all kind of incompetent. Well, then who is in charge?
Well,
yeah.
No, you're right. And if there's one thing that this has shown us right now with Ukraine is that the leaders in the West definitely are not in charge. And, going back to many things that Gonzalo said, it's whether you like Putin or not, he's in charge, and he is decisive. And when he makes a decision, he just goes for it. He's not mincing his words. He's not, backing down from the things that he says, and he goes for it. Our leaders in the West are completely either lost, incompetent, or someone else is writing the scripts for them. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe one day we'll find out.
I hope it's sooner rather than later.
It'll probably be later.
Yeah.
It'll probably be later.
Yeah.
All right. Budima, any other comments?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the one other one is I'm kind of wondering now that this is, I'm wondering, even though the West is going to go kind of ape about Ukraine, but this does allow certainly the U.S. and other kind of the Anglosphere to refocus on China, because now what's going on with Russia has kind of been, I mean, there's going to be something behind the scenes always going on, but the main focus, which was Ukraine, is now there's a cap on it. So, does that mean that the U.S. is going to pivot? I mean, it's already been doing the pivot to Asia, but does that mean that's going to happen more? And as much as China has been built up, their military still quite isn't as big as the U.S. So I don't believe, Gonzalo, that they would do anything direct. But at the same time, they definitely have said Taiwan is on their list for a long, long time. So that kind of scares me more than anything, especially.
Yeah, they've said it. They've said it too. Yeah, they've look. Russia was clear about its red lines, and China has been very clear about its red lines. I mean, we know what each country's red lines are.
Yeah. I guess it's a little bit different in that, I mean, I know, because I was in Beijing a few years ago, and we met with some people there. They do what I was told. This was from a lawyer that works there. That he thought that Xi had gotten into power because he had promised to bring Taiwan into the fold. Strategically, though, Taiwan is not Ukraine. I mean, the U.S. has strategic interests in Taiwan far above and beyond Ukraine, and Taiwan is actually a working democracy. Probably working better than most Western democracies. And you don't just have the U.S. there. I mean, you have South Korea looking there, Japan looking there. India cares a lot about it. The whole Quad structure that's developed around it, I mean, is and how much the U.S. is participating in the Quad is up in the air. But I mean, the strategic interests are definitely there, and the Taiwanese are rabidly anti-mainland. There's no way that the Taiwanese are ever going to negotiate especially after Hong Kong, that they would negotiate some kind of peaceful way to fold back into the mainland. So and how it gets resolved is going to be quite difficult. And my fear is that maybe they've already been armed with nukes, and if that's true, in a certain way, because China's already declared Taiwan to be part of it, any war with Taiwan can do just about anything in retaliation, because it's now a civil war. It's not an international war. I mean, the way that China's approached it also has kind of opened up a lot of, the way that it gets spun is, going to be quite different in the media, I think.
It's going to be quite a thing if we see China move on Taiwan. But my God, let's try to sort this one out first.
Yeah.
All right.
Right.
Budaman, thank you
very
very much. Great to hear from you. Great to see you. And take care of yourself. Thank you very much.
Okay. Right.
Take care. Bye-bye. Let's bring in Zariel. Zariel, I'm going to bring you in. Zariel,
hey,
we see you, and we hear you.
How are
Good
you?
hat. I like that. How are you, Zariel? What's on your mind?
Doing good. Ever since yesterday morning, 5:30 in the morning, when we started writing, I was following Black Pigeon Speaks, I think it was, and he was getting the information in Tokyo. It was just unbelievable. Did not expect this to happen this early. I was expecting it, but not this early. And eventful week. And Lord hopes that it just stops very soon, as soon as possible. Because as I actually I did a video the other day or the other weekend in Switzerland, and I said, I don't think people can really understand that we don't need another war in Europe. And here we go again. And it's always Europe. It's strangely enough, it's, the big ones seem to always start off over here. I don't know why, but so be it. First of all, I'd just like to say, thank God Coach Red Pill is okay. Gonzalo is doing fine. We really were worried about him. And glad to hear from him. And I hope to get some more news from him, that we can get some more news and keep up to date on him. He said so many things, as usual. I mean, I love listening to Gonzalo. When he talks, you just listen. I mean, the man is full of basic knowledge that I think everyone enjoys. And he's not stupid. Gonzalo, if you still hear me, you're not stupid. I mean, really, your experience of life is just
he knows he's not.
When he speaks about not only politics, just normal things, it makes me laugh. He's one of those people in life that make you laugh genuinely. The topic of I just picked up a couple of things. from
The,
Kamala, Liz, Justin.
the world is listening. The world is
The world,
listening. What's on your mind?
the world is seeing the clown show, as you actually coined that phrase, as far as I remember, the clown show that's going on. And where are all these people coming from? You know, the state of our leaders, our so-called leaders, is atrocious. When you think that Justin Trudeau, I literally call him a little boy. I Googled his age and found out he's older than me. But the way he acts, just as Gonzalo said, he's a spoiled, rotten kid. You see Liz, Liz Truss, she is not only, I don't know if she's spoiled or rotten, but I have to watch my words, as Alexander says. I have to really be careful of what I say, especially here. But the stupidity, of putting someone in that position, and then you have Kamala Harris. I'm not even going to get into her, seriously. But I just realized something as I was listening in. I asked myself, I know where these people come from, and I asked myself, why don't they have a connection to us normal Janes and Joes of the world? And I do believe that the answer is, who of them have actually served their country in a conflict area where the STHAHF, where the crap really hits the fan? Have they ever had, something flying around? And because they grew up with a silver spoon, or some of them even a golden spoon in their mouth, they have no idea, what life is really about. It's just being handed to them, handed over to them. And they think the elites just think it's not only the politicians, it's the elites. They think that they can just, lead because they've been given everything. And this is what life is all about. They don't have an idea of what it means to actually work their hands to the bone for one day in their life. And if they do, some politicians can be very, very down to earth, no doubt about that. But the majority of them, the majority of the elites, no way. And this is, I think, where the main problem lies, is that these people have no idea what it really means to work 24/7, an 8-day, 9-day, 10-day, 12-day hour job, feeding a family, seeing how it ends meet, the income, the outgoing, all of that stuff. I think they've just lost a total grasp of reality. Tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong. I don't know.
I don't think you're wrong, but everyone in the chat is he wrong?
Yeah,
I don't think you're wrong at all. But
am I wrong?
But it doesn't change. Zariel, it doesn't change the reality of the fact that somehow we have these people making the laws, and they're the people that are in power.
Yeah, but the question is, why are they in power? As I said, they were handed these positions.
Democracy, right?
Yeah,
that's what we're told.
Alex, let's be honest. Democracy is how is it written? For the people, out of the people, by the people. Now, it's not necessarily in that order, but who of them are really out of the people? When was the last time we saw a politician, a great leader, actually come out of the midst of our people, out of the population, and serve the population because they know what it's like? And I think that's where we have the great detriment of our democracies. All over the Western world, we actually need people who have a base. And I do say that, as you know, I live in Switzerland. You do see the politicians here, they travel public transportation. They go out and they talk to people. They don't have bodyguards or in the cell. Since the coup, that's changed a bit. But before that, they would literally just take public transportation, go out. They didn't have bodyguards. They didn't have, they would talk to the people. They had a connection to the base. And I don't see that. Look at any POTUS traveling through the world. In the Beast. Look at our chancellors traveling in the Bulletproof. Of course, these are powerful people. But I think that's where a lot of people just don't understand. This is where Vladimir Putin actually, I think he notices, he understood this, as you've discussed with Alexander quite often during your talks, that Putin is not, everyone says, he was a leader of the KGB in East Germany. He was not. He was a lawyer, and he was connected to the base, because East Germany in those days, It's just it was a different world. I was married to an East German girl, and for quite some time, so I did get a sense of what it was like over there. And the people just they have a different mentality. And I think Vladimir Putin took this knowledge along with him as he went through his years, his career, when he went back to St. Petersburg and saw what destitute situation the country was in. And I think that's why he's the only real great leader right now. And I do call him a great leader, no matter what you think of him. Don't like him personally. I've never met him, so I can't judge. But I think he understands, the values, the common values of the normal person. And, this degradation of society, he sees it. It probably hurts him as much as it hurts any and every one of us that we're sitting down here looking. And that's why we go to we go to you guys, to the Duran, to Coach Red Pill, to other independent news agencies or informative sources, because we're sick of the MSM bullshit. We just want to hear the truth, tell the people the truth. I think we're grown up enough to understand, what the truth is and what we can do to, battle corruption. That's what I actually wanted to say.
Well, okay. Well, before you sign off, and thank you. I think what you said is resonating with a lot of people in the chat. But before you sign off, how do you think the situation is unfolding right now? What are your thoughts with regards to Ukraine? Yeah. What are your thoughts?
To Ukraine, I hope, I pray that this ends fast. I really do, because it is, as I said, it's one of those points. I don't know why, but it's always located in that situation. We have Galicia, so we have the Donbass or Ukraine. We had the Balkans, the Balkan states. We had Austria, Hungary. It's always down in that corner where conflicts start to brew, and from there on, it gets out of hand. Look at the first. Look at the second. As I said, the Balkan states. I mean, that was terrifying. That was really terrifying. I never thought human beings could actually go, treat other human beings like that. And when we lose our humanity, then we're really, really up shit's creek. Pardon my French. And I think the best thing right now is I hope, if I was Vladimir Putin, I'm not, but I would really give a general amnesty to certain parties in this whole game. Say, these are my goals, as he has stated, by the 2nd of March. This is what's going to happen. It's going to be finished by then. And if everyone can just calm down a little bit and say, okay, we've accepted this, and we're not going to persecute you after this. We're not going to, let's just sit down and talk. And I've been following this from last year when Biden and Putin came to Geneva and they sat down. I was there live, and nothing happened. They just, it's just the sound of silence, as the song goes. People talking without speaking. People hearing without listening. No one's listening to each other. No one's talking to each other, trying to make a productive contribution to the world right now. It's not about a region, it's about the world. We are so global, we've become a small planet. I think Zelensky, I think Putin, I think maybe Europe. I don't think the United States should have their fingers really everywhere. I think the European cities or the European states should sit down, constructively speak about what's happening, and find a resolution to this. That's my objective opinion.
Well, there was a simple solution to it.
Yeah.
Just be neutral.
Yeah.
Ukraine. That's it. Very, very simple solution. But look, it is what it is, and we are where we are. So let's see how everything transpires. I agree with you. I think the best thing for all of us, is to have this resolved quickly. In other words, we all know who's going to win in this military operation. The best thing for everybody is that this win happens quickly, and no more blood is spilt, and everyone can kind of just see the fallout from all of this, the sanctions and everything that's taken place, and we can start to kind of manage our lives.
That cooler heads. Yeah.
That would be the best. If this festers, then we're in big trouble.
God help us all.
Really big trouble. Yeah.
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 Last point, CRP, real CRP on Telegram. I just noticed in the chat, in the live chat on YouTube, and I just tried it myself. He's not there, so
I'm seeing it. I mean, I'm on it right now, and I see it's
okay.
t.me real CRP.
Okay, if you just want to maybe take post it in the live chat.
I posted it in there. Let me just do one more quick. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
T.me / real REAL CRP.
Cool. Okay.
That is
Alex, have a
All
great
right.
weekend.
Zariel, thank you very much. Take care.
Bye.
All right. Thank you, Zariel. And Mustafa, I'm going to add you into the stream. Mustafa, are you there?
Hey,
Hello.
I'm here. Hey, how's
Hear
it
you.
going?
Doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good. Thanks for doing these lives, and it's just really fun to follow along, man.
Thanks for joining us. What's on your mind?
It's just all this, man. It's been hard to sleep these couple days. I've been following a lot of these stories, and I actually think that this is a big W for the Americans, in such a distasteful way. But a lot of these people will have to. It's so sad, but they're gonna have to. Well, they can't stay over there anymore. They'll have to move west to maybe Germany, and Germany will be Canada 2.0. They'll have all these anti-Russian people in all across. It's strange, but I think that's what they're maybe how it's gonna play out.
Well, why do you say it's a W for the U.S.? How do you see it? Like, you mean for the Biden White House, or for America as a country?
I think it gets these very anti-Russian Europe, and Europe will have to mobilize on these a lot of these excuses for the narrative, where they can drive all the policies through the narratives, and it's a big win for whoever these funny, it's great for whoever this Hollywood administration. It's great for them.
I mean, there's something there to that. Absolutely. I mean, look, at the end of the day, the Biden White House, in a way, got what it wanted. It got Nord Stream 2 canceled. It got the conflict that it wanted. It severed Russia from Europe. It definitely severed Germany from Russia. And I think a lot of people think that everything that's happened in the past 3 months
That's a big deal.
It's a big deal. Everyone thinks this was about Ukraine. I kind of think this was about Germany. Yeah,
Germany's they love China. They love I don't say they love Russia, but they've been along far, they've been along the game for so long. They know what's up, and now they're just too they couldn't save themselves.
Yeah. Well, we definitely now got a split, and I don't think that it's going to be very difficult actually for Russia to get back into the fold with Europe. I think we're definitely at a point where we have, without a doubt, seen the end of the unipolar world, and we're in a bipolar world. No doubt about that.
Yeah. I'm very reminded of. Have you seen the movie Braveheart? Where
Yes.
The king just keeps sending the Irishmen against the Scots. It's they're just repeating this whole dummy idea, and it just keeps working. And they're doing this. The partition of India. I was just looking that up. It's so sad. And when you repeat this kind of demonic policies, you're gonna get what's coming.
Sadly, I agree with you, Mustafa, and I think that regardless of who you think the winners are, without a doubt, the big losers in all of this are Ukraine and Europe, the EU. Those are the real big losers.
Hey, thank you for just all the great videos. I love them all. And it's almost, I feel like I'm ranting because it's yeah, I think Gonzalo is awesome, and I hope what he said, a lot of what he said is not true, but a lot of his hunches are quite scary, to be honest.
Yeah, he's got a good gut, good intuition. But yeah, definitely. Anything else you want to?
This could have all been avoided. I think we could have all improved
Easy.
our quality of life, focused, But yeah, anyway, we're here now.
Could have easily been avoided, easy. But yeah, we are where we are. One of the super chat questions was that Vladimir Putin he makes the news now. He makes the way the world is moving, and he made a decision that's going to change everything.
Oh, he's
You don't
back.
have to like the
That
decision.
Russia's back.
Yeah, but he made the decision that is changing the world, and this was a big one.
But it's irreversible, and now we're in a different game, and it's I'm very sad. Yeah.
Yeah, sanctions never get reverted back. They never get reversed. So all the sanctions that you see now are done.
Germany, Russia, that would have been so beautiful. I would have been so I'm not even Russian, I'm not German, but that's a great move for world peace. And this was very sad. I hope RCEP goes through in Asia.
The other call from Buddhaman when we were talking about Taiwan and China, that's going to be a whole nother issue. But like I said, let's we'll get to that when we can finally put this one to rest.
Thank you, man. Awesome.
Thank you, Mustafa. Take care. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. All right, great. Let's do some super chats, everybody. We've got a lot of super chats here. Frank Zappa GR says the Hunter Biden affair will be exposed now. Yeah, that goes along with the comment that was in Locals, which said that Russia, once all of this is done, Russia's going to have a lot of stuff on the Biden accounts in Ukraine. Maybe. I think Russia already knows all the stuff that Biden and Hunter were up to. I think everyone, all the great powers know what they were doing. Marit says a West Ukraine centered around Lviv will not only be a rump state, but a rogue one, also as it will be backed by the West and its neo-Nazis. Russia should clean up the mess there too. It's problematic. I actually heard, Marit, I read a lot of analysis that said Russia would have no problem if Poland and Hungary and possibly Romania, if they stepped in and actually took the parts that are historically theirs, that Russia would have no problem with that. So I've read analysts that say that. I don't know how true that is, but Russia would not object to it one bit. The question is, do those countries want that the western part of Ukraine? The problem with the western part of Ukraine is that no one wants it because it's so radicalized. That's the problem. Sabrina says, I really appreciate your commentaries. Thank you. Thank you, Sabrina. And Sunita, thank you for the super sticker. Iris, thank you for the super sticker. Kurt says, the reason why the failed Western politicians always go up is because they are filled with hot air. Thank you very much, Kurt. Thank you very much. And guys, don't forget, check out Duran TV. I always forget to plug Duran TV. You see all our videos streaming there 24/7. DuranTV.com. Michael says, apologies for the incorrect report yesterday on Odessa. Pictures of tanks had Ukrainian markings. Well, that's interesting. That's very interesting. I don't know. What is the situation right now with Odessa? I haven't really read much about the situation in Odessa. If anyone knows in the chat, jot that in there. I know about Kherson, that Kherson is now under Russian control, but Odessa, we haven't really heard much. Just the island off Odessa that's been taken over by Russia. Juha, great channel. Thank you very much, Juha. IT011, thank you for that super sticker. Valley S is in the house moderating. Great to have you here, Valley S. Thank you for that super chat. Divine Insurgent says, Russia and Ukraine need to stop fighting each other. They are kindred folk. Ukraine was a neutral country at one point. Greetings to CRP. I'm a fan. Thank you very much. And you are right. They are cousin, if not brother nations. But, we are where we are. And not all of Ukraine considers Russia a brother nation. And that goes back to the west of Ukraine. which sees them as more of an enemy than a brother. Joe Tacoma, thank you for that super chat. John says, dislike his mocking of Illuminati and conspiracies, blaming it all on stupidity. The deep state is Harvard, Yale, Oxford, and ENA in France. George Washington warned Jefferson against the Illuminati. Was he nuts? Thank you very much, John, for that. Raul says, Putin is ready to send Russia's delegation to Minsk to negotiate with Ukraine, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said on Friday. Actually, I just saw news that there may be a negotiation in Minsk. Lukashenko said that he will provide safe passage. Let me just pull that up. Safe passage to Zelensky. So there may be something in the works there, some sort of negotiation taking place in Minsk. By the way, the EU is going to sanction Putin personally. That's according to Austria. Putin doesn't care. I think they already expected that. Dimitrios, welcome to the Durant community. Matt W. says, time to ditch the leadership class. Couldn't agree more. Maxotic says, the consumers of resources, the West, believe it can strong-arm the suppliers, Russia, China. They lost the battle. Will win eventually. Only costs 50 million deaths last time. What's the difference? Let's hope we don't get there. Let's hope we don't get there with that many deaths. Too Small says, we'll hope Europe will be like the Middle East. Well, you know, this is not the first war in Europe, like Olaf Scholz was telling Putin. You know, everyone always forgets Serbia. Conveniently, all the EU leaders conveniently forget Serbia, and that was smack in the middle of Europe. And make no mistake about it, NATO and European countries attacked Serbia. So, you know, we can never forget that. Putin doesn't forget that. He brings it up all the time. Dan Noya says, any knowledge about the 13 biolabs funded by the U.S. government? Dan, I was actually reading about that yesterday, but I don't have any knowledge. But all I can say is this. I saw some people putting out videos and reports, and, you know, I can't confirm them. I can't confirm that it's 100% accurate. But if you map out where the explosions were heard, supposedly, and you overlay that to where they say these labs were, they kind of match up. That's all I know about that. Once again, I can't confirm that. So, you know, I'm just telling you what I read and some of the research that people have done. You know, you can search it and find it. But that's been an interesting story that no one has talked about. Let's see. Heyman says, Nord Stream 2 is actually a cage made of money to contain the bear. Without it, what's stopping the bear to eat everything it sees? China's also surrounded by small states that are indefensible. Truth hurts. Which I think I read that super chat, but you're right. Hey, man, it's worth reading again. Let me see here. Amrit. Okay. Let's see. Wolf Crew says, I don't think Russia will accept anything other than Ukraine capitulation and a phantom government removed completely. What do you think, Alex? I don't know. I think if you look at the operation right now, I agree with you. It's about all of Ukraine right now. But you know, they may accept the Zelensky coming along, the Ukraine government coming along, and putting it in writing and in the constitution that they will remain neutral, and Russia's security guarantees will be respected. But I think a change in government, without a doubt, they will want some sort of change of government, or Russia will want some guarantees that they have some control of the government. So right now, I agree with you. The operation we're seeing is about all of Ukraine. Lady Freddy's, thank you for that super sticker. Tim, thank you for that for 3 super stickers. Thank you, Tim, very much. Filipina Traveler TV says, the Duran channel, thank you for your great show. Always watching from Switzerland. Our best to Switzerland. I have a Switzerland hat today. Let's see here. Rich says, before criticizing Russia or China about democracy, any British or American should know a critical fact that a lot of wealth and land that they have in the first place came through undemocratic means. Thank you very much, Amrit, for that super chat. Comments always insightful. Sunta, thank you for that super sticker. And Iris, thank you for that super sticker. Let's see. I think I got Juha. Yep. Okay, and we have one more here. Who is Gonzalo and what did he say? That's from Dashcam. Gonzalo has the Telegram channel Real CRP. He has a YouTube channel, but I think he's reworking it. And just a great geopolitical mind. So I definitely recommend that you plug into his Telegram channel. And Wolf says, I'm assuming the Neo-Nazis, right sector, and Azov brigade will be completely annihilated or tried for war crimes. Yes, Putin said as much. The denazification, Putin said as much. The question is, will Russia do it, or will they allow a regime change government that they control, a phantom government, do it, that they control? I think they'll put a government in place that they have control of, and that government will root out all of these forces, which are deeply embedded throughout Ukraine and throughout the civil service and the government. Russia will probably get the big guys. That would be my guess. They'll get the big guys and they'll put them up for war crimes. Everybody else will kind of get rooted out over time. Zariel says, thanks for the call-in show after a long while. Thank you, Zariel. It was great to see you. Great to hear from you, and excellent insights. And that is everything. We've been going for 2 hours and 20 minutes, everybody. I think we'll call it a wrap. Thank you to everyone who was watching this live stream. Thank you to our moderators. Let's see who we have in the house. Valius, I know I saw you. Zariel, we talked to you and we heard from you. Alan, we talked to you and we heard from you. Great insight from Alan, especially with regards to the UK. GEC is in the house as well. Great to have you here. And Cosmic Rain, good to see you. Always great to have Cosmic Rain with us. And thank you to everybody on YouTube who followed this chat. Thank you to everyone who called in as well. We'll do some more call-in shows. We'll try to get those worked in as well on a weekly basis, because those are always fun. It's really good to hear from everybody and to hear everyone's insights and their thoughts and comments. And of course, thank you to our great community in Locals. And it was really good to hear some of the people in Locals. We always have a lot of discussions and a lot of chats and live streams with Alexander, and it was really good to actually hear you guys. So thank you to our Locals community. Everybody, that is it for this live stream. Alexander is having a really good meeting with hopefully someone we'll be able to bring into our shows as well, an expert that hopefully can come in to join us as well. But we'll leave it there. Alexander didn't make it back, but we'll end this live stream. Take care, everybody. Be safe. And let's see, what do we have coming up? We'll have video from Alexander coming up in the evening. I don't know if we'll get some shows over the weekend. We won't have a history show this weekend because we just didn't have time to put one together. But this weekend, we'll see if we come up with a show or a live. I'm not sure. We'll see. Anyway, take care, everybody.